the symphony of carbon and silicon. Why carbon? Why silicon? We'll see it in just a minute. So let us try to understand. Of course, we are not here to talk about organic chemistry. So what is carbon and what is silicon, and where the two things come together? Carbon represents organs, organisms, the biology, the human beings. So the carbon intelligence is reflected in ideas and individuals from the world of biology. If you look at these names out here, you'll recognize quite a few of them as being, pillars from the world of science, technology, some from the world of arts also, philosophy. It's all there. Arts. Since I am from the world of science and technology, to me, things like Schrodinger and Aryabhatta, they come to me more easily. So this represents carbon intelligence. We have had this intelligence for the last, what, 5,000 years. But today, a new person is entering this field, and that is not carbon, that is silicon. Silicon as in computers, as in software. Okay. And last year, MIT carried out a very nice article on who needs Copernicus if you have machine learning. And what did they say? They said it took humanity centuries to decide that the Earth orbits the sun. Now a neural network has come to ensure, it's come to the same conclusion using the same data in just a few hours. So this is the start of a new era of machine learning, neural networks, which of course is what you will study in the data science program. So we all know about carbon intelligence. What is it in silicon? If you look at silicon, you will see a couple of steps. In 1940, we had Norbert Wiener with cybernetics. Then in 43, McCulloch and Pitts with neurons. All the way down to Hinton and Rumelhart in what is known as backpropagation, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Then, of course, you have Google, Amazon, Uber, Facebook, the whole works. This is the evolution of silicon intelligence. And we see it in software like game playing, theorem proving, expert systems, deep learning, and of course, artificial intelligence. In all this, in the growth of silicon intelligence, there are three major trends. First is the explosion in big data. What does this mean? It means the quantity of data that we are processing is growing in leaps and bounds. It's not a very easy statement. Thanks to sensors, thanks to electronic communication, the amount of data that we generate every minute, every second is huge. No other part in our history have we had so much of data ever. Okay. And this is called what is known as internet scale data, which is different from corporate scale data. Tata Steel, ITC had marketing data, but Uber, Netflix, Amazon has data which is far, far more than what all these old companies ever could. So this is big data. The other thing is the tools used to analyze the data. We have had statistics for the past 300 years. We have had statistics for the past 300 years, and lots of theory has been built up around statistics. But most of the statistics that we have done so far is descriptive statistics, which describes the data. Whereas today, we are looking at predictive statistics, which means to predict what's going to happen. We do not want to know that customer X bought 100 units of sugar and 50 units of salt. We want to know what customer X would be buying tomorrow and day after. That is called predictive statistics. Okay. And the goal of data science and machine learning is to move from descriptive to predictive. Which brings us to the third thing called model inexplicability. What is a model? A model is a mathematical artifact which proves or which predicts something. For example, you will come across regression models which prove that tomorrow you will need 30 units of sugar and 50 units of salt in your store. Now, in the past, all these models, uh, could be explained. There was a reason why the model was as it is. But today we are moving into a scenario where the model cannot be explained, which is what makes it somewhat like a human behavior. You cannot really explain why humans behave in a certain way, but they do. So this model inexplicability is a very interesting part of the whole story. So let us come down to a very basic machine learning problem, which you will soon see in your rest of your courses. And we call it the classification problem. You see some blue and orange dots on the screen. Okay. Now, if I tell you, can you give me a rule which separates the blue from the orange? Well, it's very clear. In the first example, we see if x is more than 0, x2 is more than 0, then it is blue. If x1 is less than 0, x2 is less than 0, then it is orange, assuming that the coordinates pass through the middle. Similarly, for the next one also, you can come out with some model. So you see, these are models which you can explain. I can give you the logic by which something is blue and something is orange. Okay. Now look at this one. Can you give me a rule for this? Most probably not. Most probably. And this is the fundamental challenge which modern AI and machine learning is addressing. The ability to predict something even when there is no obvious rule around it. Okay. This is important. Now you might say, what is there, why the hell are we bothered about orange and blue dots? Who cares about this? Who cares about this? And why should I try to understand whether a orange dot is blue or orange? Is it some, obscure, theoretical stuff we're talking about? No, it's not. For example, look at this one. So when you see, to understand how we classify this, we use what is known as a neural network. And you'll see lots of neural networks later on. Now, using neural networks, you can predict the number written by hand. Now you see these are dots. Instead of orange dots and blue dots, we have black dots and white dots. And if you can accurately predict what is generating this pattern of dots, you have what is known as handwriting recognition, which is the first step in understanding deep learning, machine learning, and the whole step. So this is the importance of this neural network, because this kind of technology allows us to understand classification. How do you classify, an image into something or not? Now, this entire technology hangs around two very important concepts. You need not get into all this detail later on because you will be learning all about this in great detail in the various classes that you'll attend. But remember these two words, backpropagation and stochastic gradient descent. These are the two pillars on which the entire edifice of neural networks and machine learning stands. In your school and college, you'd have come across the three laws of Newton. Those three laws of Newton were the basis of the entire world of mechanics, machines, physical machines. You would have come across Maxwell's laws of electrodynamics. Well, those three or four laws represent all that is there in the world of electromagnetism. You'd have come across the three laws of thermodynamics, or the two laws of thermodynamics, on which exists the entire edifice of energy movement in the universe. Similarly, when you come to data science, and particularly machine learning, backpropagation and stochastic gradient descent are two key pillars on which the entire edifice stands. Okay. So, if you'd like to play with this whole concept, you can, after the session is over, you can just visit this playground.tensorflow.org website. Okay. And you'll be able to see exactly what we're doing just now, okay, in trying to understand how this whole network, neural network thing operates. Don't panic if you don't understand the stuff. There'll be teachers who will be coming and teaching you all this in subsequent classes. Just to get a feel of what this whole thing is all about, this is the place where you can go ahead and play. So now you see where we are headed. We are using algorithms and computers to solve problems which we really don't understand and which mimics the human mind. Neural networks come in different topologies. While the basic concept is all, backpropagation and stochastic gradient descent, the way these components come together, there are many, many kinds of networks. You'll read about most of this in your class. But the three most important ones are what is known as convolutional neural networks, which are primarily used to classify images by similarity and perform object recognition, face recognition. Okay. Recurrent neural networks, which are useful for processing sequential data, such as the speech, sound, written language, automatic translation. And the most fascinating of them all is generative adversarial networks, where two networks fight with each other and learn on their own. They do not have to be taught. So you have two machines playing with each other, fighting with each other, trying to fool each other, and in the process, understanding how to move forward, which leads to extremely interesting applications in the world of games. Long ago, IBM's Deep Blue defeated the human champion, Kasparov, in a game of chess. That is history. Today, we have machines which learn new games on their own. Not only learn new games, they learn new strategies. They develop new strategies, which no human being has ever thought of. They develop their own languages. I'm not talking science fiction. We'll come back to science fiction later on. This, what I'm saying right now, is machine learning, learning on its own. And then to take it to the ultimate step, we have machines which build other games like Pac-Man. So you see, in all these games are a very important part in the world of machine learning, because games, they simulate real life. Many of you play games like World of Warcraft and PUBG and stuff like that. All of them simulate reality, and very often you are playing against a computer. And very often you have computers playing as combatants, and they simulate reality. This is no different from what we see is in self-driving and autonomous cars. So you see the gap between humans, the carbon intelligence, and silicon intelligence is getting increasingly blurred. Silicon is becoming as powerful as carbon. But let's move forward. How can carbon and silicon work together? We are already, working together when you are building applications, when you are creating neural networks, when you are uh, building a face recognition software, when you are building automatic machine learning translation software, when you are writing the software for self-driving vehicles and all of that. So carbon is working, okay, to write codes which is being implemented in silicon. This is fine. I mean, this is nothing dramatically new. Let's look at something different. In the year 1977, that is 2 years before I started my engineering, I started my engineering in IIT Kharagpur in 1979. 2 years before that, there was a science fiction book which came out called Firefox. This was a book which said that we will have machines which are controlled by human thought. So this was a Russian aircraft that was hijacked by an American pilot who could think in Russian. There's a huge story around it. Okay, there was a movie also, which is available in YouTube. So later on, when you see this presentation again on your own, you can run those movies and find out. I got this book in my hand in 1982 when I was in my third year. And it was a fascinating book which I read through, I remember, in just one night, where human beings are controlling machines with their thought. 1982 science fiction. Fast forward to the year 2000. Today, we already have thought-controlled machines. These are not thought-controlled aircraft, but these are thought-controlled wheelchairs meant for people with severe medicinal problems or medical problems who cannot move their arms and legs, but whose brains are active. So what happens out here is we place electrodes on the brain, sense the electrical signals, and then use it to control machines. So this is like a thought-controlled machine. Now, as you know very well, our brains are electrochemical. There is electric signals being generated, but these are not binary signals, they are analog signals. And yet, it is possible to pick up these signals. And for years, we have had what is known as electroencephalograms, which allow us to record brain signals. But in the past, they were used to decide whether you're having a problem in your brain, you have a disease or not. But people realized that there's a lot of information regarding your thoughts and intentions which can be pulled out. So in fact, with this you'll find these are becoming more and more sophisticated. You can see this quick video, where this woman is of course a paraplegic, and she cannot move her hands, There's a robotic hand which will feed her.
Today I accomplished a goal that I set before the surgery even took place. They were asking if there was something special I wanted to do, like touch my children's cheek or hold my husband's hand, and I said, my goal is to feed myself chocolate. And I did that today.
So you see, that lady controlled that hand with just her thoughts. This is typically no different. Uh, this is typically no different than controlling aircraft with your thoughts. Of course, it's order of magnitude different, but you see how things are moving. Okay. And of course, the best application always begins with games. And we have this company called Emotive, which allows you to play computer games without using your hands and fingers. Again, you could look at this video on your own, but just imagine, you are playing, any of your favorite computer games, and you do not need a controller. You just have your thoughts. So you see now silicon and carbon are coming closer and closer together. There's a greater degree of overlap between the two of them. Okay. Moving forward, the concept is very simple. There are thoughts in your head which are represented by electrical signals. These electrical signals have to be read, and then they have to be sent across to the different machines that you want to uh, operate, which could be a wheelchair, which could be a computer game, or hopefully one day an aircraft. But, always a but in this, the devil is in the detail. It's not easy because your brain is generating so many signals, you do not know which signal is meant for what. Your brain is controlling your whole body. It is doing so many other things. Which is the signal which translates into the movement of your hand? So this is where we come back to our famous classification problem. If you notice out here, again, you have a random pattern of dots. From there, you have to figure out which pattern means I want to raise my hand, and which pattern means I want to lower my hand, which pattern means I want to give you a slap, and which pattern means I want to put a food in my mouth. Again, we are back to our deep learning. Again, we are back to our neural networks. So you see, all today's activities is focused in classification of signals. Now, the interesting thing is, a very interesting thing is, we think that all the intelligence, all the signals are in the brain. We think that the brain is the source and origin of all our ideas, which is true. Which is why in the past, they always used to try to tap into your brain to find out what are your thoughts. Until somebody realized that there are other places on the body which also contain a huge amount of information. And this huge amount of information is nowhere better than on your wrist. Why wrist? Think about it. Suppose you want to sit down and type something. You want to type something, right? Or type a letter A, B, X, Y, Z. Okay. So in your head, there is a thought which says type A. This thought has to move from your head down to your hand, down to your wrist. Your wrist must move. Your wrist must move. Your wrist must move. Your fingers must move. Just one sec. Just one sec. To move your fingers to the and take it up to the point A, up to the point A on your keyboard, there must be information on your wrist which says how to move your finger. So the information about moving your finger to the point A has to be somewhere in your wrist. Otherwise, how is the wrist moving? How are your fingers moving? So the easiest way to track this, is to put a bracelet on your hand, and from the bracelet in your hand, you'd be able to pick up the signals, and then of course use your deep learning neural networks to decipher what signal means what. Okay. So you see, there's a lot of message lying on your hands, and this was used by a very intelligent device. Okay. A very intelligent device which allows us to trap not just the movement of your fingers, but also the intention. Watch this video very carefully. You see on the left-hand side, there is a person wearing a bracelet from where the signals are being picked up and they are being sent to a computer which mimics the movement of his fingers. Obviously, it could also be a robot. You'll notice one very interesting thing is that even when the finger does not move, but the person has the intention of moving the finger, the actual thing appears. So it is possible to trap your intent. Watch this. It's not that the system is watching its hands. That's why he's kept it behind his head back. Now watch this one. He wants to open his hand, but something else is keeping it closed. The system senses his intention. Okay, so you see, this is a very powerful interaction between carbon and silicon, which is why we are talking about thought controlled devices right now. Now this technology is so powerful that Facebook acquired it. It was originally a company called CTRL Labs. Okay, it was acquired by Facebook for nearly $1 billion, and it's now a part of Facebook's recognition technology. In fact, those of you who are using Facebook from your phones, you will soon realize that Facebook is trying to put in the technology through which the camera on your phone will sense your reaction on your face and understand whether the post you are reading is something that you like or dislike or get angry about. So you need not directly put a like on that face, on that post. Facebook will be able to sense it directly from a picture of your face. Amazing, isn't it? So you see, this is where the blur between the carbon and the silicon is getting increasingly blurred. The boundary between carbon and silicon is getting increasingly blurred as human beings and machines work together, not just in writing programs and using computers, but in really working together. Okay, and of course, this thing leads to the concept of cyborgs. Would have come across, things which are half machine and half human. All this was science fiction, but today it's becoming closer and closer to truth. And all of this depends on the kind of data science and deep learning that we have in our Praxis course. The other thing is also interesting from thought to speech. Just like we can decipher the movements of our fingers, we can also decipher, whatever we want to say. So if I want to say something to you, it begins in my brain, in my head, the muscles of my face get activated, and I say a few words. My tongue moves, my jaw moves. So all of this can be picked up. And again, a whole lot of deep learning tools can classify them, whether I want to say hello or whether I want to say goodbye. They can sort it out, and then I can say it. So we have reached a point where common words, which I wanted to say, can automatically come out without me having to speak it. Okay, so you see, from your brain, from carbon, it's moving towards silicon seamlessly. Information flows are very simple. Now the reverse is also very true. Reverse is true. You see, there's a concept called the bionic eye. What is a bionic eye? Okay, understand what happens when you see something. When I see something, light falls on my retina. It generates electrical signals which go to my brain, which my brain understands as a face or an object. Now, why do I need that eye? Can I not push in the electrical signals directly? For example, if a computer has to show me a picture of a dog, well, it can send the corresponding signals directly to my brain without having to first display it on the screen and then having it seen by my eye and getting converted back to electrical signals. So you bypass the entire optical part and directly go from electric to electric, from the silicon electric to the carbon electric, and that's where you can see the bionic eye. Why is bionic eye important? Obviously for blind people, people who have lost the retina. So for them, you put a camera, and from the camera, the image goes straight away. Again, this is not science fiction. It's been available for the last 5 years. Similarly, I think only 2 days back, Elon Musk has said that his company Neuralink will be able to stream music directly into your brain, which means you do not need to first have a speaker, then hear the sound in your ear, and then listen and understand it. So from the machine directly into your brain, this will be a chip. And what does this chip do? This chip will actually be a deep learning chip, which will have all the neural networks built into it, which means this chip is a silicon-like part of the brain, the organic chip. Okay, the organic chip which can decipher electrical signals and determine whether you are talking or singing or whatever. So you see, there is a bidirectional transfer of information between silicon and carbon, and what stands between them is the process of deep learning, neural networks, classification, which is exactly what we learn about in our data science. So this is what we said, moving forward and backward, the information is moving. And of course, the most interesting company today, of course, Elon Musk does everything very interesting. His company called Neuralink is working on, a kind of a thread which is almost like, hairs on your head. Okay, people like me, we have very little hair on our head. It's good for us. We can replace our few hairs with this Neuralink, and then we'll be able to interact with, machines very elegantly. And this can provide both read and write operations, which means the movement of information from machines to the brain and from brain to the machine can happen very seamlessly. Of course, I have not seen it happening. You have to trust me that, or you trust Elon Musk that, such things are possible. Which takes us to the next step. Is it possible for a brain to connect to a human brain via digital networks? I can talk to you. Of course, I'm talking to you. But in case, while first I talk, I generate sound, which is picked up by my microphone, which goes to the internet. Then it comes to your machine. Your speaker utters the sound, and then the sound, you hear the sound in your ear. Why do we need this sound in between? I have signals in my head. Why can't I transmit them directly to you? Sounds futuristic, like thought control, thought reading. You have heard of people who can read people's thoughts. It's possible. So you see, it is possible, to make a network by which, from my side, I input data into the network, and from your side, you pull data to the network, and the two of us are in connection. So this is like, I call this the worldwide mind. Just like we have the World Wide Web, which connects to computers, to silicon devices using more silicon. Why cannot two carbon devices connect to each other using silicon? Okay, if you think about it, the whole network computers happened in the last 50, 60 years, not more than that. The Ethernet, there are two key technologies which spawned the World Wide Web, which created the World Wide Web. The first was Ethernet for basic data transmission, invented in around 1970s. Okay? That's when two computers, could exchange signals. And then about 10 years later, we had the TCP/IP protocol, which allowed us to understand what those signals were. So instead of a voltage going across, you put TCP/IP packets, and on top of that, you can layer. I can put voice, I can put a command, I can put a DOS command, any command, which the computer on the other side can understand. So the TCP/IP is the protocol where, or the rules which allow us to communicate data in a sensible way. Now, if you look at today, the biological version of Ethernet is already there, and we have just seen that. With my brain, I'm controlling a wheelchair. Okay, with my brain, I'm controlling a computer game. Okay, so the basic data transfer, which is what Ethernet is all about, is already there when it comes to carbon and silicon. However, we are not yet able to get the protocol right. So even if I sense the signals in your brain, I will not be able to understand what you are thinking about. That is a problem. I'll see some signals in your brain. I can sense that you're thinking, but I can't tell you what exactly you are thinking. That is where our AI technology comes in. Pattern recognition, classification. If you go back to my first few slides where I said that, I can make out that, this means the number 9, this pattern of signal means the number 7, which is pattern recognition, face recognition, all of those things. Once you do it here, I will be able to read your mind. Provided I have access to your signals, which means provided you allow me to reach your signals, which you can stop by putting in some kind of a firewall. Okay, so now we have instead of a worldwide web of computers, we have a worldwide mind of organic brains or carbon brains. Again, if you think it's too futuristic, just go and break down each of those parts. We have all the parts in place. Just a matter of connecting it all together to make it happen. Just like in the 1940s and 50s, they had computers, but they could not connect it together to create this seamless experience. We are in that position now. We have bits and pieces in place, but in 15 years' time, I'm sure you would have what is known as a thought control browser, okay, which will be able to search for answers to any question that is available in any connected minds. Just like today we sit down, I want to know about, say, the temperature in New York right now. I go to Google and I get connected to a machine which gives me the answer. Similarly, the same thing can happen, but before that, what we need are the neural networks, which will be able to decipher this storm of command of signals, and from there extract what really is important and understandable. So that is our goal when you are studying machine learning, predictive analytics, deep learning, AI. Remember, the goal is to create something like this, to be able to make some sense of what is coming next. Okay. As I keep saying, this already happened. Again, I am not talking science fiction. You can just go and check out this. There is an ability. They have again brought it to a game, okay, where games are very important, because games that we play on computers are an accurate representation of outside life. People may tell you that games are all waste of time and farcical, this and that, but believe me, it is in games that lie, okay, a lot of very interesting technology which always happens. So you have thought-to-thought control collaboration, okay, where two people can think together and play a game, and each can affect each other's thoughts. It's very simple. You have to turn a ball this way or the other way, and I could sense what you are trying to do, and you could sense what I'm trying to do, and we could work together to turn the ball in the proper direction. Okay, this has already happened. So, as I keep saying, anything is possible as long as it does not violate the laws of physics. Like, for example, perpetual motion is not possible. Okay, that violates, or the second law of thermodynamics is invalid. You cannot change that. Okay, but other than that, anything is possible if you know how. And two very interesting quotes: reasonable people adapt themselves to the world. Unreasonable people attempt to adapt the world to themselves, and hence that's how the world changes. All progress, therefore, depends on unreasonable people. So if I'm being unreasonable in saying that thought control will happen tomorrow, you may say I'm unreasonable. But because of people like me, it will happen. If not tomorrow, day after. But trouble is, those who can visualize this new reality are vastly outnumbered by those who cannot. So people call these people as mad. This guy is mad. Don't ever call somebody mad, okay? You never know what is the reality that he's operating in. Number two, the gap between what can be imagined and what can be accomplished has never been smaller. So if you imagine something, then make it happen. We can now walk backward from our imagination rather than walk forward from the existing past. So I want to do this. Let's see how to make it happen. To do this, this has to happen. To do that, this has to happen. So I walk backwards until I reach where I am, and then this is how I move forward. So this is how we move forward and we achieve what seems to be impossible, what seems to be science fiction, and it's going to be reality tomorrow. So this is what I wanted to say to you. Okay, what we are going to study in Praxis is machine learning, deep learning, AI. This is going to be the foundation of a new world that we see. This is so very different from anything else that we come across anywhere else. Okay, this is the start of a whole new world, which brings me to the end of my presentation. What you're listening to is Mozart's 40th Symphony being sung in Indian Sargam. It's like coming together of carbon and silicon, Western and Indian classical music. Okay, they call the Symphony of Carbon and Silicon.